Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Administration and Operations Committee meeting. This is our first daytime meeting for this committee, so thank you all for attending. As far as attendance, Councillor Miller, we haven't heard that he will not be here, so we will just wait for him to show up. Other than that, all councillors are present. And there he is right there, perfect. Okay, so we have a full committee, appreciate that. Just one little piece of, I don't mean to center anybody out here, but we do have a new employee to the county. I would like to introduce Andrea Bazard. She's going to be replacing Alex as the Director of Environmental Services. So welcome to the county. And with that, we will move on. Does anybody have anything to add to the agenda? Councillor Coleman.
One item under new business.
New business, thank you. Anybody else? Okay, we've had a request to move 8.1, which is the staff report for grants requests received after awards, to move that up till after the delegation of 4.1, if committee is okay with that. Okay, so we will do that. Any other changes to the agenda? Seeing none, can I get an mover with hands all over the place this morning? Okay, Councillor Oakley, Councillor Bell, appreciate that. No other questions? All in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Thank you. Declaration of pecuniary interest. As always, if you have any, let me know now, or if one should arise through the meeting, just make it known at that point in time. Delegations, we do have a delegation this morning. Roy Haggard for the Canadian Legion Branch 29. Roy, if you'd like to come up to the front, please. Yep, the red light should be on there, or green light should be on. Welcome. If you just state your names for the record, and as you know, you've got 10 minutes for your presentation.
Each?
Nice try.
Okay.
Thank you.
Roy Haggard, Royal Canadian Legion, Branch 29, Paris, Ontario. To my left is Don McLeod. He is our president for the next couple of years. And we'd like to thank you very, very much for the opportunity to come here this morning in support of our application. We understand that the grant process is basically closed. We understand that the monies that were in that budget are gone. We understand that. We hope that you will understand we have some major crisis problems with Branch 29. Year 21, we had our roof inspected, and he came back to us and said, well, guys, you should be okay, 24, 25. We looked at that and we said, well, yeah, but when we get to 24, 25, we're going to have a major problem if we don't bank some money. So we were able to, through a grant processes and whatever, be able to put away $20,000. And we thought, well, okay, it'll be maybe 25. And because of the weather that we've had recently with the wind and the rain, we have developed some major problems in terms of leakage. We've had another company come in and they inspected the roof and provided us with a list of things that need to be done immediately. And hopefully we'll be able to do that. We've had estimates anywhere between $40,000 and $60,000. We have $20,000 in the bank. We are in a situation financially that is way beyond our means to replace it or repair it, whatever it is. Because of the construction industry right now, they're very busy. They don't really need more quotes going out. They don't have time for more quotes going out because they're so far behind and winter is coming. We're in the same situation. Winter's coming. We've got to fix some of this roof. If the ice gets under it, we got a problem. The steeple, the shingles are blowing off continuously. One starts, and it's just like dominoes. They all start to go. We hopefully will be able to do work before winter. If not, we're looking at possible structural deficiencies going forward, leakage, et cetera, et cetera. In 21, after we did our major renovations to the branch, being accessibility and washrooms and so on and so forth, we opened the branch to community-based nonprofit organizations. We do not charge these people for the rental. Their monies are better used in accomplishing goals within the community, like the Kiwanis and the Lions and so on and so forth. Again, we are trying to be part of a community hub within Paris and provide services beyond our Legion. It has met with a great deal of success. We've had hockey clubs in there, we've had baseball clubs in there to meet, and they don't have to spend $100 or $200 for meeting. We also, in 21, started to partner with the county, and it's in the presentation, with the Seniors Club. Seniors Club were at the church, as you well know, and you were paying about $900 a month for rental to the church. They approached us and we said yes. Normally we would not charge the Seniors Club. We said if you could help us cover some of the costs, we'd appreciate it. So rather than pay $900, you gave us $400. You saved $500. So, you know, you compound that, it's maybe $6,000, $7,000 saving to the county. And we're happy to do that. We're happy to get the income for the branch to help us offset expenses. As you well know, Legions are not a gold mine. Many, many, many are going down because of the financial resources. Legion here in Paris, 1925, continuous service. We want to keep that. We want to keep going. We want to be in Paris, but we need help. We did not apply for a grant in 22. We did not apply up till now, 23, with the full intent of sitting back a couple of 3 years and apply. We knew the roof was coming and just keep working at that and apply in maybe 24. We need your help. We're hopeful that you'll be able to support us. We understand your financial obligations. And if there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Good. Thank you for that. Any questions to the delegation? Councilor Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through to Roy. Roy, yeah, thank you for coming in. I got to ask because you're here. Legions, yeah, as you say, they're not bastions of wealth. At the same time, the province says you guys no longer have to pay property taxes. I think that's 3 years, 4 years, whatever. Has that helped significantly?
Yeah, that was a long time ago that they took that out. Long time ago, and it has helped. As I said, you know, Legions are not a gold mine of financial income, and you all probably have Legions in your own communities, and you know what's happened. Membership is dwindling. We're unable to bring in new members from Afghanistan. We actually have one that just signed up. Did 3 terms in Afghanistan. It's a whole different philosophy with our recent veterans compared to our World War I, World War II. Whole different philosophy. We're trying desperately to bring in just people. We've been doing our barbecues, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. You know, the membership is working hard to keep it. So those type of things absolutely help. Well, I don't know what our taxes would be. Well over probably 8,000, 9,000, something like that. I don't know. But yeah, it's just the money's going out, but the money's not coming in.
Okay,
that's the problem.
Okay, thank you. I just want I want to know that it's making some difference. But
it's absolutely
okay.
Yes,
that's all I need to know. Thank you, Ray.
Any other questions for the delegation? Okay, seeing none. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your time and all the best in your future endeavors.
Okay, so as noted with the agenda, we are going to skip right to 8.1 right now, and that is a staff report of RPT 0408-23, the grant request received after awards. Heather, I'm not sure if you want to speak to this or just answer questions.
Yeah, the report just outlines the technical review. Staff is supportive of any amount or whatever council would like to do with this grant application.
Okay. So can I get a mover to get this on the floor first? Mayor Bailey, Councillor Howes, any questions on that report? Councillor Howes and then Councillor Oakley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to staff, I just wondered if on the agenda part of if it's a typo where it says that the funds would come from the surplus at the end of 2024.
Yes, sorry, it should be the 2023 surplus.
I assume that's
We've
what
got too
was-
many years in our
Yep.
heads right
No.
now.
Yeah. Fair enough. I assumed that was what it meant, and happy to see that confirmation. Thanks.
Councillor Oakley?
Through the chair to staff. So just so I'm understanding this correctly, this is scaled down from for application for it be 75% of the requested amount, and then it's been essentially slashed in two because that's what we did with all the other grants because we cut the budget in half.
It is scaled. We did it's a 0.42, I think, factor. It's the half that we took out for the hospital, but also we had more grant requests than we had, so it would be 100% of what they're entitled to.
Yeah.
But it's scaled back for that hospital fund. Plus, we had to do some scaling because it was still too high with the actual grant awards.
And then just one more point of clarification: have we granted any other emergency grants as of yet?
We
Do you have
did.
this philosophy?
We did one, I think, for the Burford Figure Skating Club.
Okay.
I think that's the only one that we've awarded as an emergency grant. Now, the recommendation as it's written doesn't actually grant any money, so you'd have to, if you want to do that, we'd have to put some recommendation forward for that.
Councillor Oakley?
Through the chair, if it's all right, I will make an amendment to the motion that we approve the grant funding that is listed in the report here, which would be $4,200 from the capital and $2,100 from the emergency.
Seconder for that, Councillor McAlpine. Everybody understands that? Any questions on that amendment? Councillor Chambers and Councillor Howes.
Just through you, Mr. Chairman, perhaps to staff, this would apply to 2023. We're almost at 2024. We're reviewing the grant process. If I understand the report, latter part of the report, in 2024, the Legion would certainly be able to be considered for an additional grant, perhaps up to and including the amount that would be deficient in if this resolution passes. Am I correct in those assumptions?
Heather?
Through the chair, yes, that's correct.
And having heard that, Mr. Chairman, I'm wondering, due to the emergency request, roofs are very important, and winter is very hard on roofs. I'm looking at in the crystal ball of 2024. I can't see that this grant would not be approved then. Who knows? But if that's the case, due to the timing of the situation prior to winter, perhaps the grant request, the total amount could be considered rather than going into 2024 and going through the same process. So I'm not adverse in granting the Legion the entire request of 10 and 5 due to the nature of the roof and due to the nature of being so close to 2024.
Okay, so that would be an amendment to the mover. Mover and seconder are okay with that? Councilor McAlpine, you're okay with that? Okay. So again, just to reiterate here, what the amendment to the motion here is that we give the full amount at this point in time, 10,000, 5,000. Mover and seconder are okay with that. Okay. So Councilor Howes, you had a question to the amendment?
Thanks. My question was to the original motion, and I support the amendment wholeheartedly. So the way I'm reading the report is the grant piggy bank is empty, and any extra funds for emergency grants are to come from year-end surplus, which we understand from another report tonight is going to be a modest amount. Does the Legion have to wait until the end of the year to get the money because we have to confirm that there is indeed a surplus, or through this process, are they able to access the funds immediately? Through
My
you, Mr.
understanding is immediately, but Heather?
Through the chair, they would get the money now, and we would fund it at the end of the year. If by some chance we had zero surplus at the end of the year, it would come from the contingency.
That's good information, thank you. And I just wanted to highlight the fact that the Legion had not applied this year or last year
Correct.
through the grant process for any funds. And I think that's a significant ingredient in this.
Correct. Any other questions to the motion? Okay, so everybody's clear on what we're voting on here? All in favor? Opposed? That was unanimous. Okay, so thank you very much for that. Now we're going to flip back in our agenda. Thank you. Okay. So we're going to flip back to section 5 now, 5.1, adoption of the previous minutes. Get somebody on the floor. Mayor Bailey, seconder, Councillor Coleman. Any questions on that previous minutes? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Any business arising from those minutes? Seeing none, we will move on. Section 7, consent items to be approved. We got a few of them here. The first one is RPT-0287-23. It's a housekeeping amendments for the good forestry practices. Can I get a mover to get it on the floor, please? Councillor Oakley, seconder. Councillor Kyle. Any questions on this report? Seeing none. All in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Okay, 7.12, which is RPT-0383-23, the appointment of an engineer for the Cathcart Drain under Section 4 of the Drainage Act. Can I get a mover? Mayor Bailey, Councillor Miller. Any questions on that report? Seeing none. All in favor? Opposed? That is carried. 7.13, which is RPT-0385-23, a response to the request for realignment of the Hatchley Municipal Drain. Get a mover? Councillor McAlpine, Councillor Coleman. Any questions on that report? Councillor Miller.
Just a question of clarification, Mr. Chair. If I read this in the report correctly, we're requesting that no engineer be appointed, but at the same time, we expect the drainage, our drainage person to bring forward a report later on this. Am I reading that correctly?
Who can help us out with that? Mr. Walton?
Through you, Mr. Chair, to Councillor Miller. Am I on here? Yeah. What will happen in this is a drain that exists, and we are entitled to maintain it, and what we plan on doing is going ahead and doing the maintenance. What's being requested here is be a fairly major change made in this drain to realign it. I have been out and looked at this, what the change has been requested. Not sure it's even practical. And, you know, what we're saying here, which we don't say often, is we shouldn't proceed with this. We need to maintain the drain that was, you know, some years ago put in the place that it is. It's a fairly natural area. There's not really a lot of farmland around this. It's basically through a swamp, and realigning it would be quite difficult. A lot of environmental issues.
Okay, so just to follow up, so,
Yep.
so this is just saying no engineer, nothing. This is it, and we're not going to move the drain.
Yes, we're going to do the maintenance as the existing report lays out.
Yeah. Okay, as long as it's just trying to be clear. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions on this report? Seeing none. All in favor? Opposed? That is carried. 7.14, RPT-0392-23. It's a CIP application for 112 King Street in Burford. Mover, please. Mayor Bailey, seconder. Councillor Oakley. Questions? Seeing none. All in favor? Opposed? That is carried. 715 RPT-0104, the St. George Water Service Class Environment Assessment Environmental Study Report. Can I get a mover? Councillor Kyle, Councillor McAlpine. Questions? Councillor McAlpine and then Councillor Miller.
There's been some concerns about water pressure in the north end of St. George, and I was wondering if this would be helpful in alleviating some of those issues.
Who can? Mr. Walton?
Through you, Mr. Chair, to Councillor McAlpine. This report is to actually implement the new well supply and new reservoir at the north end. Certainly, as we're looking at that, we can look at other of these design issues as to whether there are issues there or not. I'm not actually aware right now that there is pressure problems there in that end, but we'll certainly take that under advisement. But this is the start of the process for the final design now. We'll be going through the public review period, and then we would be proceeding with the project.
Okay.
Yeah, I had one other question,
Yeah, go ahead.
and it'll come up with other constituents, and I assume that the cost of this would be covered by development charges for the most part, or?
Through you, Mr. Chair, to Councillor McAlpine. Yes, this is a project that's in the development charge bylaw, where we're starting our process to update that, and the majority of the cost for this would be through that. Certainly, this is a security of supply issue for the municipality, though, so there would be some costs come out of rates as well.
Good with that? Okay. Councillor Miller?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, in the recommendation, council's directing staff to initiate the detailed design of the water treatment facility. I'd like to just reiterate, if there's an option to increase, if you have a decision tree and you have an option to increase capital costs that result in operational savings over the life of the plant, that you at least consider it. I don't know what there is as far as technology or if anything new's come along, but I liken it to a house. You know, you put in a air source heat pump, costs a lot of money in capital costs, but it saves you operating costs and, you know, fuel down the road. So I don't know, like I say, if you have that decision tree, I know as a council, we're not going to be that deep in the weeds, but it would be something I think would be prudent.
Okay. I think I can speak for our staff that we do look that way, but I appreciate you bringing that up. Any other questions on this report? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? That is carried. 716 RPT 0393-23 year-end holiday office closures. Can I get a mover? Councillor Howes, seconder. Councillor Kyle, questions on that? Pretty straightforward. All in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Okay, that brings us to the end of 7.1. Now 7.2, consent items to be received. I'm seeing 4 of them. Does anybody want anything pulled? If not, can I get a mover for all of them? Councillor Miller, Councillor Coleman. Councillor Miller, question?
Just want to give a shout out to our now retired Director of Environmental Services, Alex Davidson, for another perfect drinking water report for St. George. So he scored 100%. So shout out to him.
Good call. No other questions on any of them? Okay, all in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Okay, Section 8 staff reports. We've already done 8.1, so we will go to 8.2. RPT 0376-23, reporting on parking violations. Can I get a mover, please? Councillor Bell, Councillor Coleman. Questions on this report, which is very interesting. Councillor Bell.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess it's a question for Greg or whoever is here. I think I brought this up in the first place, and I think it will not address what I think that the concerns of the citizens were. And the issue is one of timing. I mean, we only have a limited number of enforcement officers. When people see a parking infraction, if they ring bylaw, likelihood is that by the time bylaw arrive, people have moved. And in the same time, that bylaw infraction could have caused an accident and we would regret it. So I think it would be nice if we could have something a little more than you're offering there, Greg. And I understand your reluctance, but could you just explain why we could not go a little further and invite people to phone in or phone in photographs so that there was evidence? Because I can't imagine that you could have much better evidence than a photograph, but you can enlighten me. Thank you.
Certainly, through the chair, to Councillor Bell. Yeah, the report is self-explanatory. We tend not to rely on sole witnesses. We've used that in the past. I know it's not the best way to move forward when you have evidence that somebody is providing. In the heat of the moment, often constituents or residents will be, apt to appear before, a justice of the peace to go to court. But as time passes by and things calm down a little bit, those individuals are not apt to attend court. We've had some instances with dog owner liability issues where that's happened to us. So we tend not to rely on witnesses. We prefer relying on officer testimony, officer observations, officer photographs. And we believe that the transition to the administrative penalty system will certainly assist with that, as indicated in the report. It takes the onus off of the officer to actually issue a ticket when the offense is being committed. So some municipalities have gone to a photo enforcement model in school zones. They have increased fines, and it's through the administrative penalty system. So you can take a photograph and mail the registered owner a parking violation notice under the administrative penalty program. We do have officers that are patrolling these areas, but as indicated, there's 20 school zones and there's a limited number of officers, so it's a problem. It's a problem everywhere in the province, but we are responding to it. We are looking at our numbers for staffing for next year to have more of a presence in the school zones during those peak times.
Councillor Bell, follow on if I may, Mr. Chair. Your comment about photo evidence, I think what's the difference between an enforcement officer taking a photograph of somebody causing an infraction and a member of the public taking that same photograph of that same infraction? If you're going to use the photographic evidence and just say, there's your ticket.
Through the chair to Councillor Bell. The difference is if you tender that as an exhibit in court, you have to produce the individual who actually took the photograph to qualify it and authenticate it. And that's not always possible. As I mentioned, people are not apt to appear before court for a $20 or $30 parking violation after the fact. The best evidence that we go with is with the officers. The danger with having witnesses as well is that they're going to be identified as a complainant, which has cause a lot more friction than what it's worth in the end. We are committed to increasing our presence there, but we're looking at our numbers for the 2024 budget.
So final comment if I may. So what's the advice you give to citizens when they find themselves in a situation where they see somebody clearly breaking the bylaw?
Through the chair. So the advice would be to call us immediately through the various channels that I provided in the report. I think we make it quite easy for people to contact bylaw enforcement. And depending on the location of the officer, we may have the capacity to respond sooner rather than later. We do have a dedicated parking control officer that was hired in the middle of the summer. We haven't really tested the effectiveness of that officer through the academic year. We expect that there's going to be some better response times, and we are striving to have better response times overall.
Okay. Any other questions on that report? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? That is carried. 8.3 RPT 0406-23 natural gas expansion to Harley and Glen Morris. Can I get a mover? Councillor Miller, Mayor Bailey, questions? Councillor Bell.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to Zach. Where is Zach?
He's coming.
He's coming. While you're going up there, Zach, my question relates to the analysis you've done, and you say that to put gas into Harley or Glen Morris, there's going to be a 23-cent surcharge per cubic meter over a 40-year term. You said that's about $550 annually, times 40 years, that's $22,000. Is that, am I reading that right, that we're expecting our residents to pay $22,000 for this service? Right?
Through the chair to you, Councillor Bell, that is correct, and those are the parameters set out by the Ontario Energy Board, where in order, because it's a regulated utility, the only way to bring more infrastructure online is to get new payers to essentially pay the whole cost of that infrastructure. So that's how the math works out, that those new people joining in have to pay that fee over that time period. And in order to make the project economical, that's where we get into the cost of the municipality.
Just a follow-up question. Do we have any evidence that residents will be comfortable or willing to pay that $22,000?
Through the chair to you, Councillor Bell, I think that's kind of our next step, to work with Enbridge and do that surveying and really understand, if the community is interested in connecting. So I think that's the next step.
Okay. Any other questions? Councillor Miller, then Councillor McAlpine.
Yeah, no, I was going to respond as well. Because I think through Mr. Chair to Zach, I think we were looking at having an open house. Is that still the plan?
Through the chair to you, Councillor Miller, we would work with Enbridge on a whole strategy to kind of get the word out, open houses and surveying. Yep.
Okay, and I appreciate Councillor Bell's addition and math skills there, because that's correct. It's 40 years. It wouldn't necessarily be the same family or person, because over 40 years some of those houses will change hands. But I suspect a lot of them would be quite willing to pay that, given the costs they're paying now for either propane, oil, or electricity. So I hope we do go ahead and again have that open house and see what the public is thinking there.
Okay, thank you, Councillor McAlpine.
The only question I was wondering about was, because of the extreme cost of this $1.3 million to bring it to Glen Morris, and the advances in heat pump technology has come a long ways. And I'm wondering if that's part of the reason why in your report you have it's only slightly more expensive to have a house heated by electricity now, whether the extra cost of bringing in natural gas is maybe better put into a subsidy to have some of the community change over to, say, heat pump technology. Have we explored that avenue at all?
Through the chair to you, Councillor McAlpine, I think we are in a time of flux where there's different home heating options that are coming along, and I think if we were to go ahead and work with surveying Harley and understanding what the residents are interested in there, it might give us an indication of what is the actual demand out there for people considering new sources to heat their homes with.
Councillor McAlpine, you good
Okay.
with that?
Yeah, as long as it's sort of considered in the mix.
Okay. Any other questions on that report? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Okay, 8.4, which is RPT 0389-23, the bylaw to repeal and replace try that again, John. Bylaw to repeal and replace the regulate open air burning bylaw. Can I get a mover? Councillor Coleman, Councillor Garneau. Questions on that report? Councillor Howes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My question for Darren is, this all makes sense, and I support the idea of taking a bit more of a conservative approach. But when a county resident is considering having, I'm going to have a fire in my fire pit this afternoon, and there's not a fire ban on, and their fire pit is properly located away from other buildings and things. How do they find out what today's wind speed is, so that they know whether today's the right day to have a fire?
Darren?
Through you, Mr. Chair, to Councillor House, you can go to a weather app such as WeatherCam, and it usually has it right on the homepage.
And it goes specific to like, just like any other weather, like
If-
to where you are.
Yeah, if you have it set for location services, you can look it up that way automatically. I have my phone today on me. For example, today it's coming from the west at 9 kilometers an hour, and that's on the WeatherCam app.
Okay, thanks very much. I anticipate that question coming up.
No, it's a very good
So-
question.
so, Thanks.
Any other questions on the report? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Thank you. 8.5, RPT 0379-23, the solid waste service review and collection tender options. Mover? Councillor Bell, Councillor Oakley. Questions? Councillor Bell. Absolutely. We're going to talk to it first, committee. Ooh. We'll go with that.
Good morning, committee. Just wanted to highlight some of the big aspects of this report. So the current solid waste contract ends on January 1st, 2025. So staff are preparing to release the tender for the next contract in November of this year. We need lots of lead time on it, more for the preparation of the new contractor to make sure they have proper staffing and trucks to start on that January 1st date. So in preparation of the new contract, we went out for public engagement in the spring of 2023. We held in-person meetings and also online surveys, and had an engaged grant website with lots of good information for the public to review and gain their input on not only options for the new collection contract, but also other solid waste program options to bring forward over the next couple of years. We did have pretty good participation in this compared to other engagements that Grant has done. We had 339 people complete the survey questions that would be either online or when they were at the Public Information Center. And so the programs that we have recommended to include for pricing based on the feedback we got from the public and also just best management practices within the solid waste industry right now, looking at other municipalities and comparators, are our current garbage collection, which we have to provide, but looking at a weekly option and also every other week option for that. Every other week option, typically you would pair that if you're going to do a kitchen organics program, including kitchen organics as a pricing option. So these all are pricing options that we're going out to ask for price to consider. We would be able to pick and choose how we want to package our program through the pricing that comes in. We could come back with only garbage, considering on price or what the initiatives are to move forward with this. But the kitchen organics options we have in there would be one, doing kitchen organics countywide, kitchen organics only in the urban areas. Those would be the urban areas currently that we pick up yard waste, or kitchen organics only in St. George and Paris. The other three options are our current Christmas tree program. That might be something that we could look at cutting if it was a cost concern. Our furniture and appliance pickup program, which is our bulky waste program that we have, which is a call-in program. And another option was looking at possibly picking up on only from one side on selected rural roads around the county. And that option would be a greenhouse gas reduction initiative and also cost savings due to the less number of kilometers a truck has to run, so wear and tear and gas. The other non-collection contract programs that we recommend to consider farther over the next few years, and that we had feedback on, was an enhanced hazardous waste event or day that would be either more than the one event we do per year, or looking at doing a permanent depot at one of our solid waste facilities. Reducing bag limits. Right now, people are allowed to put out 4 bags, especially if we were to approve a kitchen organics option. We would want to reduce that down to hopefully change people's attitudes towards utilizing the organics program and taking the time to sort it. So if we went down to 2 bags, they would possibly have more waste if they considered organics as a waste, and they'd be forced to put it into that kitchen program. But hopefully it would help change some attitudes. Looking at additional hours at our solid waste facilities, that was just some of the feedback we had. We would look at the current user data and see if that was actually required. Increase divertible items at our solid waste facility as new programs are developed or offered, which makes sense, and the possibility of looking at bag tags, a user pay program. The benefits of the bag tags, especially if we were to do a kitchen organics program, is again similar to reducing the bag limits. It would make people more probably willing to participate in those programs because they would be a non-payment program, the organics program, and also the blue box program so increase our diversion on that end. Just wanted to highlight a few things happening within either the province or within the solid waste industry at this point in time. So right now, some of our municipal counterparts have recently re-tendered their contracts, and a lot of this is happening due to the blue box transition that we all know is happening on January 1st, 2025 for the municipality. So on January 1st, 2025, the producers of the blue box material will become responsible to deliver and manage the blue box program for residential properties within the county of Brant. So at that point in time, the county won't be managing that, providing that, or it won't be funded through the tax levy anymore. But with that program change happening over the province from the first municipality changed over on July 1st, 2023, and the last one changes over on December 31st, 2025. Multiple municipalities are going out with new collection contracts or extensions because they're taking out that blue box component of the contract. And we have heard from our municipal counterparts that they are seeing a significant increase in the tendered prices that they're getting back for the reduced, the different option packages or reduced service. One case in point that was publicly discussed at their council was Haldimand's went out in the spring of 2023. Their contract came back 87% higher than their previous contract. So a few other items just to highlight is our county's 2022 diversion rate was 33%. So if that is an initiative to increase, we've estimated that could increase that diversion rate 15 to 20%, depending on the participation. And it is that participation in those diversion programs that we need to drive home. And I had mentioned about the bag tags, where the bag tags is one of those avenues to help change attitudes towards participating in these diversion programs. So that's staff wanted to keep bag tags on the agenda for council and the county to be looking at, even though as noted in the report, the public opinion was fairly low on their preference for that option. And the last item I just wanted to note was with regards to the organics program, the county, since we are under the provincial policy of 50,000 people to require an organics program, the county doesn't need to implement a program under legislation by the province right now, but multiple other municipalities around us, i.e. City of Brantford, they are starting one. on November 1st, 2023, because they do meet that 50,000 people threshold. And just for the next steps on this, so once we put out the tender, it's anticipated staff will bring back a report February 2024 with a recommendation of award. And that report would include the recommendation of what staff believe is the most sustainable options package for the county to move forward for council's consideration. If there's any questions at this time?
Questions? Councillor Chambers, Councillor House, then Councillor Bell.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, perhaps to Rob Walton, and I may be wrong on this, so you don't have to answer the question if I am wrong, but with regard to the bag tag program, Oxford County has had this in place for several years, and I may be wrong, but I think Rob was with Oxford County when that was initiated. I'm just wondering if he can elaborate the pros and cons, what happened and what didn't happen, and whether the residents rebelled and that kind of thing.
Rob?
Through the chair to Councillor Chambers. So you did get that right. I was involved in that for quite a number of years. So Oxford County took over waste management in 2002, and the new contract to bring everybody under the same contract was put out for February 1st, 2003. 20 years ago, I guess, a little more than 20 years ago. At that time, actually, 4 of the area municipalities already had bag tags, and 4 didn't. So that was interesting. And I believe even Ingersoll had. So one of the urbans already had, and 3 of the rurals. And I lived in one of the rurals, Zora, which had the bag tags. So there was quite a debate at the time as to whether we should implement bag tags or not. And at the end of the day, we did implement them. At first, there was a lot of talk about whether it's double dipping. You know, you're paying for this program under taxation. You're paying for it. Why should we do tags? So the last budget that I can remember there, it was waste management was about 5.6 million, and the tag revenue was 2 million. So it wasn't the whole program. We tried to set it so it was covering the garbage collection and disposal costs is what we did. I think at first there was a bit of rebel, but it's something you get in your way of doing, and it just becomes a way of doing it. And that 2 million of 5.6 million is a substantial income for the municipality when you look at all the other pressures of the efficient use of tax money. The last reported diversion rate there, though, was 57%. So that is substantially better. And our programs, besides that, are fairly similar. The recycling program. So I think it's something really to look at, and we're going to see budget pressures in the 2024 budget on other things. We've got this program coming forward as a possibility of other revenue. We also have council's approval to do the public input on the stormwater program and how we might have a stormwater fee. And there's actually a public meeting which will be soon advertised for October 18th on that, which will be then bringing more information back to council on that. So.
You're good with that? Okay. Councillor House, and then Councillor Bell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, through you. So just a couple of questions related to the survey, and we get different feedback from members of the community, and I see that in terms of the survey, a total of 18 people attended the Public Information Center, and 339 responded to the survey, probably online. Which is a fairly small sample, but and the survey results are there, but I'm wondering if you could speak a little anecdotally about the engagement you've had with people related to the Kitchen Organic program and demand level for that program, and whether you saw people understanding that it carries extra costs. And then my other question is going to be, within the survey and some of the comments that came in on the survey, there's a consistent feedback on requesting extra hours at the Paris landfill station, which is not tied to our contract. And I was just wondering if you could speak about any consideration for that in the future. Thanks.
Okay. Through you, Chair, to Councillor Howes. So with regards to your first question about the feedback that staff have heard about an organics program, and unfortunately, or as you said, there was the section of the survey that did have people could leave other comments, and I think there was a number of them that reiterated even though they had shown their support through the survey question, but then followed up to that they're looking for or we're hoping that there would be an organics program developed. I think a number of the people that I had spoken to had moved to within the county within the last five years, I would say, and they were used to an green bin organics program at their previous residence, and they utilized it at that point in time, and they were saying they would still like to have that service, and right now they do feel guilty putting it in the garbage at this point in time. We do point out we do have a backyard composter program that we do subsidize those, yeah, so I would say from the people that I talked to, there seemed to be quite the support on that matter. And then with regards to your second question on the, sorry, can you?
It was.
Oh, the hours, yes, sorry. The hours at the transfer station. We haven't done a look at the 2023 user hours yet. We did do this in 2021 and took a look. What we did find, we have a high usage in the mornings on Saturday especially, but by later afternoon, it seems to peter out where we are open till 4 on Saturdays at the transfer station in Paris here, and really after 1:30 till 4, there aren't a significant number of users at that point in time. So that's where we do struggle with trying to find how we can provide more hours, because we are open during the April till November, 8 till 4 p.m. and 9 till 3 in the more winter months there. So the other difficult, we have heard some people asking for evening hours, maybe in the summer. Looking at those hours, we almost want to do a survey to see what hours would work best. Because even if, in my opinion, if we extended it till 6, it doesn't give a lot of time for those people that do have 9 to 5 jobs to get home, get their material prepared, and then off to the transfer station. We'd almost have to look at an 8 o'clock opening time if we were to stay open later on those nights. But yeah, we haven't looked at the 2023 numbers really to support additional hours at those facilities.
Thanks, Matt. I'm just going to add into the kitchen organics piece here. We've got Biggers Lane coming on. We're going to be making a big investment there. Probably the long term is to get into a program of the organics is a good thing, but there is a cost associated with it. And there's also the whole greenhouse gas thing of running a lot of roads for picking up what you. So we really need to hit the sweet spot on this if we're going to do it. Now, the change in the recycling program maybe is the sweet spot for this, because if we can do co-collection on this and already running the roads and collect it at the same time, there maybe is a spot here. We'll figure that out through the tendering process. I know this is a change of the report, but the more I think about it, I think we actually we're going to be doing an RFP on this, so we will have things that the tenderers can propose. But I think we should be looking at the 6-day collection too, if we're going to look at these other options, and then the possibility of having the drop-off spot at the landfill site. So if at the transfer site, so if somebody does miss, so maybe we can reduce our collection costs, but give the option of another. So I know we didn't put it in the report, but the more I think about it, I think that 6-day, it's probably something nobody wants to hear about. But if we're going to look at the big picture of what's good for the sustainability of the program, the whole greenhouse gases, how much we're running the roads to collect this and whatever, I think it is the right thing to at least look at, and I'll wait for the feedback from committee on that.
Thank you. Quick follow-up. Thank you. That's good information, like broad picture information that helps us kind of visualize it. One other question, just when other communities our size, and I know we are a large geographic community, when they do the organics program, is it a separate truck or do they have one truck that does all three, basically?
Right now, most of them do use a separate truck because, like you said, there is the three commodities that they're utilizing, and it does go back to the every other week garbage, where a lot of the municipalities, when you provide an organics program, you go to bi-weekly garbage collection. So,
Okay, so we've got Councillor Bell and then Councillor Kyle, and then Councillor Oakley, then Councillor Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to Matt. Matt, great report. I really like the range of options that you're going to seek from our suppliers. I can't think of one that you've missed, but maybe there is, but I can't think of it. Well done, thank you. I think the issue of resources is important. I can't get over the number of times I've seen your notes come out saying, sorry, we can't pick it up today, or it's going to be delayed today. So I hope they were going to deal with sufficient resources and associated penalties if they don't provide those resources. So that's not a question, that's just a request. On page 3 of your report, you talk about the increases that other people are experiencing. In your presentation at the PIC, we talked about 15% increase from the status quo. So if we did nothing else, we just did what we're doing now, we expect 15% more. I guess the 87% that Aldermen are experiencing is over and above that 15%. So you potential there for doubling the costs. So just to put that out in the open. I would like to know if we put an economic value on the diversion rate, because I know that the time and the cost of expanding Biggers Lane was significant. So when we do our analysis of these very options, do we put a value on the diversion rate?
through you, Chair, to Councillor Bell, at this time we haven't thought about that being an economic evaluating criteria on the tender evaluation. I mean, we could put a dollar figure to what the life expectancy of the landfill could be expanded due to the diversion. One item with the landfill, even if we take less waste to the landfill, there are fixed costs. There's not going to be a significant savings on the year-to-year cost of the contractor that's on site with their equipment. They still need the same type of equipment on site. They may have a bit of savings in gas if they're not running it for quite as many hours per day with reduced tonnage coming in, but it would be a fairly minute on that. It would be really the life expectancy and the diversion of or delay of having to start a planning process for the next landfill.
Yeah, if I may, Mr. Chair, that's my analysis as well. I know we had trouble finding a new location or an additional location, and if we didn't have Biggers Lane, I don't know where we'd go. So there's some value in not having to deal with that in the future. Do you need from council some direction on what the diversion rate should be? Or can I ask you the other way around? Are you going to propose to council what the right diversion rate is for our county?
Through the chair to Councillor Bell. I think Matt already said this. We're going to bring back what we're going to propose as the sort of the big picture, what we think is the best proposal based on both the environment, economics, and the social piece of it, all three of them. So that's what we propose to do, and then council make the decisions based on what you think out of that.
Okay. Well, one final comment, if I may, Mr. Chair. You mentioned it a couple of times, and I think, Rob, you touched on it just at the end there. I think we're going to be finding ourselves in a dilemma between what's popular with the residents and what is economically prudent. And I'm going to ask you to be as economically prudent as you possibly can be. Leave the popularity to the council if they have to make that decision. But I think we need to think about the economic prudence of this program going forward. I'll stop at that. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Councillor Kyle.
Thanks, Mr. Chair, through you to Rob and to Matt. The report was great. I really took a lot of information out of it with the different options. I guess one of the things I'm a little skeptical about is the diversion rate. Just I know that many of my farming neighbors would probably comment that the diverted garbage is ending up in their fields and in their ditches along the side roads around the county. I know we were out there yesterday picking up someone else's garbage. So a little bit of healthy skepticism on that. So I'm wondering if we were to move to something like the bag tags or reduced pickup days, things like that. Anecdotally, from some of the other municipalities that have done that, do they also report a correlation in complaints from rural residents with dumping?
Through Mr. Chair to Councillor Kyle. I can speak to this back to the whole transition, which I had answered in Councillor Chambers' question before. So I was in Oxford when we did the transition to the new program there. And I would say off the hop, there was a little bit of that happening, but it wasn't really widespread. When you actually, put out the directive there that, you're to go into that garbage and try, you usually can locate who it is. And we did go after people to say, hey, what's going on here? So it wasn't widespread. It happens everywhere though. This is not something that doesn't happen. It'd be foolish to say it isn't happening in my neighborhood too. But I don't think it's any more widespread, especially as the program matures and people understand what it's all about. The big thing is having the tags available easily for people to get. And we got into the scheme there where, basically every convenience store, every grocery store, whatever has them. And if they're easy to get, it's not seem to be a big problem.
That's good. You good with that? Okay. Councillor Oakley, then Councillor Miller.
Through the chair, moreover, just comments and questions. I just want to state from my own lived experience as I worked in hazardous waste, doing chemical pickup and hazardous waste pickup. I am hugely in favor of the idea of having a depot, having that one-time event. And I heard this door knocking as well. There's people who are on vacation consistently when these things go on, or happen to miss it, and whatever else. And what that means is all the hazardous waste ends up in the garbage, whether they're allowed to or not. And then you have paint, oils, heavy metals in the environment. So I'm heavily in favor of the suggestion of having a permanent depot. Additionally, in regards to the organic waste, there was a lot of feedback. The primary option being that the entire county gets weekly garbage and kitchen organics, and the second being status quo. But I think overall, amongst the options, there is a large demand for the organics program, and I think as well from a social standpoint, environmental standpoint, divergence standpoint, that it really is a priority, and we should be heavily considering doing so. Those would be my comments.
Thank you for that. Councillor Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. A couple comments based on the discussion we had. First comment, hazardous waste day runs like clockwork. It's beautiful. I talked to somebody from Brantford 2 weeks ago. They said, "Oh yeah, we had hazardous waste day. I had to wait for 2 hours in line." So that whole book a spot is great. So kudos to you guys. I never went till this year, and yeah, it was worked like magic. Second thing, maybe reduce pickup reduces our costs, but we increase the transfer hours. Is that what was? Did I hear you guys say that might be a possibility?
Through you, Mr. Chair, to Councillor Miller, I said that if we did actually consider that 6-day pickup, that we would look then what the cost increase the transfer site hours were, so that we could make up for that for people that needed a fallback.
Okay. Maybe it reduces our costs as a municipality. I know from a carbon footprint point of view, I suspect it applies to garbage pickup, but I know for the food chain, the biggest footprint isn't the truck that carries the food in, because it can carry lots and lots. It's the cars that come in and take home the small bunch of bananas, not the big truck that brings them all in. So maybe at the end of the day that increases our overall footprint. I don't know. I'll leave that out there. I just want to say I like all the options, Matt, that you've listed in the report. I think they're all great, except for one I'm a little skeptical, and that is reducing the bag limits from 4 to 3. And the reason is, and I'll actually read it from the letter that was left for us regarding parking from Ashley Jasinski. And the reason I'm questioning the go from 4 bags to 3 bags per household, she writes, collectively we are experiencing a housing crisis, and now more than ever, we are seeing multi-generational households, in-law suites, and homeowners looking to subsidize the cost of living by sharing their space. So we're going to see, I think, maybe increased housing intensity. Do you think that? Anyways, in light of that, do you think maybe going from 4 to 3? And I know it was popular on our survey, but I'm just wondering if that's.
Rob?
Through you, Mr. Chair, to Councilor Miller. We'll bring back this whole thing as a package. If we do go to organics, that shouldn't be an issue at all, because the organics would not be under the limits, right? You fill your barrel and I know in my example of my house, which I have an organics program already, but it's a both a green cone and a black cone in my yard. I put out garbage, one bag maybe every 5 weeks. So, now I don't have 2 people there, but I think there is a good way to, if we do that. So I think that has to be in perspective for the options that we bring back. So.
And like I said, I'm not against it. I'm just questioning it. And I mean, I know for my own, I have my own organics program. It's called The Garden. And, yeah, 1 bag a week, maybe. So, okay. Thank you.
Councillor Coleman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. More a comment than anything, and a great report. I guess I do have, the one major concern I have is that, and I got it marked, one side of rural road collection option. And I was part of this when we went through this 8-10 years ago. And I never had more calls, because I don't want my neighbor's garbage on my side of the road or in my yard, especially if it blows and everything like that. And then we found out that there was roads that people couldn't get across. They had issues. And it's hard for seniors. I'm not saying I'm an old senior yet, but for some people, can't get their garbage across the road. So we really have to take a good look at that and whatnot. I know there may be some cost savings. And I think those people that live on rural roads can figure that out themselves. I see that all the time. They move the garbage over. If the majority of the houses are on the left side, their garbage will be over there, because they understand it works. But you have to be careful, especially those roads, because some of those rural roads don't have shoulders, and it's pretty hard to do that if you can't just put it on your side of the road.
Okay. Councillor Garno.
Thank you, and I'm glad Councillor Coleman raised that. I was encouraged to hear that this is an RFP that we're putting out rather than strictly for quotes. But I wonder, with what Councillor Coleman has raised too, that if we have too many options here, thinking from someone who quotes municipal work in other categories, we're asking an awful lot of contractors here in terms of if this, then that type options. And then it might be because of the minimal mobilizations and that if there's too many things here, maybe if we have stuff that is not going to be patable and we wouldn't consider, that we won't ask them to put the time in on that. And the one that I would raise as well is the one-sided rural collection, because I think by the time we identify the number of roads where this might work, we might find that the savings are not significant enough to justify. Likewise, I'm mindful on the cost increase and some of those minimums regardless of which options we choose, because we do have another item later in the agenda that talks about the costs of trucks, and certainly garbage trucks are in that category, and the staffing concerns. I want to make sure that we're not setting unrealistic expectations for contractors right now, given the labor crisis, because I think a lot of our issues with timely collection right now are attributable to the fact that this type of work is very difficult to encourage folks to take on, given the licensing requirements to drive the trucks, as well as the need to be physically fit to slug waste all day. So I'm just concerned that if we put too many options forward, the contractor is going to price this in a way that ensures that they're able to recruit for it. And I'm not sure from a procurement standpoint what the answer is there, but as I read this, that was what I was reflecting on here. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you for that. Go ahead, Matt.
Just to respond to that, through you, Chair, to Councillor Garno, multiple options are standard for these types of contracts. Our last contract that we put out with this, since it also had blue box components in there, there are almost 50 pricing option variations in that one. This one, since there's no blue box, and the blue box in the last one caused about 4 to 5 different variations on how they could have priced blue box. I think we're down to around 20 pricing scenarios for this current contract. So I think on that end, that's not it's familiar to the industry of them having to really pay attention and go through and price multiple packages.
Rob?
Through Mr. Chair, Councillor Garneau, and this industry has changed a lot too. There really aren't, I call them mom and pop contractors anymore. Most of the contractors are fairly big, sophisticated operations that have programs to be able to help them out as to do all the GPS and figure all this out for the pricing. So I think the industry has changed. In 2003, when I did that big contract in Oxford, the landscape was entirely different then, but almost all of those small contractors exist as either part of other contractors or don't exist anymore.
Okay, I'm going to look at Mayor Bailey and Councilor McAlpine. You're the only two that haven't had anything to say on this one. Any last words on that? Mayor Bailey?
Through you, Mr. Chair, just about the one side or the other collection. Sometimes if you're the only one that puts it on your own side, they don't collect it anyway, so you might as well just put it with everybody's heap of garbage. So I think the contractors do size up every situation on it, even in St. George. I mean, if everybody puts it on the one side, you better put it on the other side. They're not going to take it anyway. So I don't think you should waste too much time on that one because they do what they do. And if you complain too much, then a couple of broken bags a month start happening. So I think we should just limit the options to one side.
Councilor McAlpine, did you have anything?
Well, it's just questioning about the hazardous waste again. I think it was $60,000 per time that we do it, roughly. So if we did it twice a year, it'd be 120,000 versus 100,000 if we did it all year round, or was the...
Through you, Chair, to Councillor McAlpine. So our contract for that, there is a base fee. I believe it's $14,000 is the setup fee. And then everything else above that is based on how much tonnage or weight of material brought in. So it would all fluctuate depending on the number of users that came out if we did do a second event.
Okay. And the when it comes to paint, and some of those that are considered hazardous waste right currently, would they be taken over by the new program so there would be less hazardous waste in the future?
Correct, yes. Right now, over the last 4 years, the province has transitioned a lot of their previous diversion programs to more of a supposedly to be a producer-led program, and the producers are mandated to have a certain number of outlets per population area or geographic area. From what's happening right now, the producers are being very slow at developing those outlets. I did find out recently, Rona in Brantford does take back paints, aerosols, and light bulbs, a number of things. So that is one of the local outlets in the area that have that they finally have opened up and is consistently taking this material. But there is the possibility at one point in time that there could be enough private outlets developed that we as a municipality want to say we're no longer going to accept propane tanks, tires, those types of items at our solid waste facilities because there are enough other private outlets within the community that the residents could be taking that back to.
Okay, so that could reflect what we decide too. Okay, thanks.
Okay, so everybody's had a chance. Just a couple quick comments from myself. I want to say thanks to you guys sitting at Cairnsville and up at the BSC for the time you did. It was a great presentation. It's unfortunate that something as important as this, in my mind, having a total of 18 people show up is kind of embarrassing because I definitely get more than 18 calls on this subject. And I think I can look around the table and I'm pretty sure that everybody else does. So that's a little upsetting. But again, great job to you guys and fantastic report. It lays it all out there and I appreciate that. So very good conversation committee. Everybody's had their chance. That being said, we do have a mover and a seconder for the report, so I will call the vote. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Thank you. Okay, so moving on to 8.6, RPT 0382-23, fees and charges, bylaw update for municipal consents. Can I get a mover? Councillor Howes, Mayor Bailey. Questions on this report? Councillor Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The municipal consents. I was hoping maybe in the report we could get some context to this. Do other municipalities charge for municipal consents? Other questions? Does it result in less investment? I know we need infrastructure, so just some context.
Right?
Through the chair, I'll just give a little bit of background. I started doing this little bit of study on where staff time was being spent, and a few councillors have reached out to me about restoration work for these utility companies. So I really started looking at what goes into these municipal consents when we're approving infrastructure to go into our roadways. So I had asked Braden to reach out to other municipalities and see what they're charging. And it's all over the board. So I started looking at our staff time that's being spent on these applications when they come in. And then what I had asked Braden has there been any decisions in the industry when dealing with say Bell or Rogers or any of these big utility companies? And so we went back to and looked at the Hamilton, because Hamilton's been through this whole process, and they had a CTRC decision. So they had come back with a model for charging for municipal consents, and a lot of the other municipalities are starting to come back with fees. Some do have them, but they do vary across the province.
Councillor Miller?
Okay. Yeah, I don't want to be the only one in the province charging it, because we will see a lot more going in with. Well, we talked about natural gas. Maybe that's a possibility. Certainly, fibers going in. My question, I don't understand. Maybe it's a simple question. Hopefully, could you explain to me what a municipal consent permit means when it's 100 meters or less? It's 460, and if it's 100 meters or greater, 920. Are we talking if we're looking at a bigger area? Is that what you're referring to?
Through the chair, that is correct. So some of these can get into several kilometers, which needs more staff dedicated time to them. So what we try to do is look at, we put in the report that we had received 116 municipal consents last year. So we looked at those as a whole. Then we looked at what Hamilton was charging. Ours is not as expensive as Hamilton, but what we tried to do was make it fair and equitable to companies that want to do business in the community. And then we looked at our staff costing and time, our fuel mileage costs, and our truck costs, and we came up with something that we feel is very reasonable compared to what other municipalities are charging.
Okay, I appreciate that, Greg. Thank you.
Thank you. Mayor Bailey.
Thank you. When you have two figures like this and you have a definite cutoff from 100 meters or less, 100 meters or greater, is there a graduated in between?
No, for this instance, sorry, through the chair, no, for this instance, we had just done 100 meters or less or 100 meters or more. And the 100 meters or more is we're trying to force these service providers to go into municipal access agreements with us. So we're thinking when they get up to that 960, we're trying to steer people into municipal access agreements where in the municipal access agreement, the terms of the will be negotiated at that time. So that's what we're trying to steer people, like the larger service providers that are in municipal access agreements with us. Their terms are different in their agreement, and that's what we're trying to steer people towards. So that's why there's a larger fee for that 100 meters or more.
You good with that?
So 120 gets Duke for the 9.
Yes.
Thank you.
Any other questions on that report? Councillor Coleman.
I think I know where the mayor is coming from this and this one. I do have a little bit of issue on this. I would rather see just one flat fee for any consent on this. and go from there, because I think, as the mayor is saying, or I'm saying, whether it's 150 meters, there's a big difference between that and much greater. Like if it was 900 meters or whatever, I believe in a one flat fee. So that's my.
Would you like to amend it?
I will amend it to one flat fee, $900 for the whole work. If it costs that much money for everybody.
Seconder to that, Mayor Bailey. Questions on that amendment? What the amendment is we're looking to have one flat fee of $900. Councilor Chambers.
Just a caution, I know municipal fees, they have to be justified, and there has to be a justification for $900. If it doesn't cost $900, then it shouldn't be $900. And I'm not sure what the justification would be, but I don't disagree with it's a lot simpler if you have one rate, but if you're gouging the ones that aren't, then you shouldn't do that, or you're not supposed to do that. So maybe a comment on that effect.
Greg?
Through the chair, and that was part of our study when we went back and looked at the 116 other municipal consents we did last year. We tried to do just a little bit of a price difference between the two, and then we also were looking at, let me just flip to my page here, when we were looking at Hamilton, who had already been through the CRCTC decision, their 100 meters or less was $617.41, and their 100 meters or more was $1,234.61. So it is representative of what's been done in the industry already. There is a scaled fee framework in place that's being used in other places. So that was the methodology behind this.
Okay. Any other questions to the amendment? Okay, so the amendment on the table is one flat fee of $900. I'm going to call the question. All in favor? Hands up high, please. Opposed? Looks as though that was defeated. Okay, so we are going to call the question. Any other? Mayor Bailey?
Could we go back and have staff find another figure instead of just going fishing? It doesn't have to be 560, it doesn't have to be 920. Could it be 810 and have staff see whether that as a flat fee would work for the whole county? I see that 920 could be expensive, but I'm thinking if we got somewhere, if you could do the numbers and see if 810 worked or 790 worked or something, because I think you're going to find more people using the 100 meters and under. So I don't, maybe I could put a motion on the floor to go back and see if there is another number that's more suitable to use as the one number for everyone.
Okay, so move it back to staff to revisit it, see if there's a number, just a blanket across the board, taking into consideration what Councillor Chambers had reiterated earlier.
Yeah.
Is there a seconder to that motion? Councillor Coleman. Okay, so the new motion on the table is to send it back to staff, review the numbers, look for one flat fee across the board. Everybody clear? Questions? Councillor Chambers.
And I support that. The planning applications, not every planning application costs the same, but the fee is the same. It's a blend, and I think that can be the proper approach.
Anything else on that? I will call the question on that. All in favor? Opposed? That is carried. So that will go back to staff. Thank you, Greg. Okay, 8.7, RPT-0400-23, approval of a new full-time position for a project engineer. Can I get a mover to get it on the floor? Councillor Coleman, Councillor Howes. Any questions on that report? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? That is carried. 8.8, RPT-0330-23, request a second driveway entrance to accommodate a resident mobility at 20 Alexander Street in Burford. Mover to get it on the floor, Councillor Oakley, Councillor Miller. Questions on this report? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? That is carried. 8.9 RPT 0381 23 repurposing tandem and pickup truck. Can I get a mover to get it on the floor? Councillor Coleman, Councillor Kyle. Questions on this report? Seeing none, I will make one comment on this. Thank you to staff for looking into outside the box, we'll call it, and trying to ensure we've got safe vehicles on the road for our staff, but B, getting the most out of the vehicles we can. So I appreciate that. No other questions, Councillor Chambers.
Mr. Chairman, I guess the question that begs to be asked is that if the trucks are useful after what we deem them to be not useful, why don't we extend the time period that we use them for what they're supposed to be used for?
I guess Greg's going to come up here, but I would assume that's this may be the start of that, Councillor Chambers. Greg?
Yes, thank you. Through the chair, we have been doing that over the last couple of years, and especially with the 10-year forecasting. And with moving towards corporate fleet now, we're identifying areas, and because all the departments are working together, we're identifying shortfalls. So what we're trying to do is spread things out more equally amongst the departments, and we're definitely trying to stretch the fleet where we can.
And just a follow-up, and I appreciate that, and that's I guess the question that should have been asked, why didn't we do that a long time ago? But I think it shows that the staff is using their thinking caps to help us in our budgeting.
Absolutely. No other questions to Greg? Okay, thank you for that. I will call the question. All in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Okay, 8.10, RPT 0182-23, winter maintenance plan. Can I get a mover? Councillor Howes, Councillor Oakley. Questions on this report? Councillor Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Reading the report, I didn't see the word insurance or insurance premiums anywhere in that report, and I just, to me, it seems like a good winter maintenance plan, but I'm no expert, but it seems good. Do we know if it'll have any impact, positive or negative, on insurance premiums? And was Intact involved at all? Or I wonder if the author could speak to that.
Rick?
Through the chair, I can't speak to the increases and stuff for this year, but I do work with Kim DeCoster, our insurance clerk, and what I do provide our program to Kim, not only for winter maintenance, but any other programs that we run. And that does have a very impactful outcome on our premiums. She has already indicated that. And the County of Brant does have some very good proactive programs. Our winter maintenance program is one. Our sign reflectivity is another one. Our sidewalk inspection is another one. And these are all realized by the insurance sector. So we do report on that yearly, and it does have an impact on our premiums.
Thank you. Yeah, no, it does. You probably know this, and I think most of us know. Intact has services that we pay for as part of our premium. One of them is looking at things like that. So I don't know if that's something you've considered, but it's out there. So I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions on that report? Okay, just one comment from myself. As we all know, over the last, I'd say 3 or 4 weeks, our nights are coming quicker. It's getting darker. It's getting a little chillier. And then when I read this report about winter maintenance, I guess winter is just around the corner. So I appreciate the looking forward for that. No other questions. I'll call the vote. All in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Thank you. 8.11 RPT 0373, various parking and traffic modifications. We've got a number of them here. Councillor Bell. Seconder, Councillor McAlpine. Extensive report. Questions? Councillor Chambers.
Mr. Chairman, could I ask that number 17 be separated from the report? I have some comments on that. That's the King Street in Burford, which is supported by attachment 14 as the diagram.
Any others want to be pulled? Councillor House, quick question.
Procedurally here, in the pulling of some of the items, is it pulling for discussion, or like, can we just ask questions about elements in the report like we normally would?
Absolutely. You can, as we normally would, you can ask questions. I think he wants it pulled for separate reason here, but.
Okay. So if I can ask a quick question about
Yep.
the William Street element. I was just curious, Greg, it seems like a lot of effort to gain what appears to be one parking spot. I was wondering if you could give us a little more backstory on that.
Greg?
So through the chair, a few years ago, council might remember, committee might remember that we started getting requests due to lack of parking for residents that don't have parking spots or driveways, or even the ability to build them on their current property. So we do, as staff, have to go through a process to collect the information, look at the roadway, design a parking spot, make sure that the resident wants it, and then we have to have the corresponding bylaw brought forward. And it is a process, but it's a process that I think makes people enjoy their home more, and makes them a little more active in their neighborhoods. So it's a process worth it, but yes, it can be a little lengthy.
Quick follow-up, Mr. Grant. So if we see an adjustment that involves one parking spot that suggests that in that area, that's all that there's demand for.
Through the chair, not necessarily. This is upon request only. So you may have two homes side by side, and only one resident may want a permitted parking spot in front of their house. So that's why we leave it up to residents. We've identified how many homes in the community do not have driveways, but it is up to the individual whether or not they want to go through the process to have a permitted parking space in front of their home.
Okay, thank you. And they pay for a fee for that?
Through the chair, that is correct. There is a fee associated with it.
Thank you. Councillor Bell?
Chair, through you to Greg. I think everybody's got that in front of them. It relates actually to the William Street story, where people are looking for permits to park. And the lady that wrote to the Paris Independent last week had made the suggestion that we might want to expand that facility, and she's talking about Arlington Parkway as an example. One of the reasons we have problems with parking on places like Arlington Parkway, there isn't enough space between adjacent driveways. Now, if we were to make parking outside of an individual's house private to that person, then we could probably forget the 1.5 meter element, because the only person that's going to park there is the person that lives in that house, and they take all the risk should their car somehow overlap their driveway. So I would encourage us to think about expanding the private permit parking in our community. It is a source of revenue, but it also may address one of the problems that we've had and will have more as we have properties that are on not 20-foot spacing, but 15-foot spacings. So I would encourage staff to look at that. I have a second question or second comment on number 12, which is the cobblestone drive at Granville Circle. That actually relates back to the conversation that Greg Bergeron and I had earlier. This is the very place where people were parking when they shouldn't be parking. Now we've got the problem that they may stop when they shouldn't stop. So it just aggravates the issue that I mentioned to Greg Bergeron earlier. So I can expect that we will get more complaints back from residents, and I think our bylaw officers need to be ready to be coming out to Cobblestone fairly regularly. Thank you.
Any other questions on Councillor Coleman?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I guess I have a problem with 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. It's all in the Canesville area. So I don't know where these businesses are going to have all these trucks delivering to them park. They're established businesses. There's no other room for them to park alongside the road. So I can see it on one side, but I can't see it on both sides. And just for example, on number 6 in Shaver Street in Kingsville, no stopping prohibited on the north side, no stopping prohibited on the south side. Gotta have a little bit of leeway on some of this, because these are established businesses, been put there a long time ago, and they all got deliveries. I see the lumber trucks and whatever else going to them every day. I'm guilty on one of them too. I'll park illegal too, but I don't know where they're going to go. So I have a problem with it.
Greg?
I'd just like to add a little bit of clarification to that. We're not actually changing anything in the field. This was part of the parking study that we initiated a few years ago. We went and mapped everything out on GIS as to the current bylaws that we have, and then we did a field study of the signage to make sure that it was all applicable. And what we found was there was signage in the field that wasn't representative in the bylaw. So this is just housekeeping here. So for number 6, all we're doing is matching the field signage to the bylaw to the field signage. So we're not actually going to change anything that's already in place for any of those that you had just mentioned. This is just housekeeping so that if a ticket is issued, it actually matches the bylaw. So these are just some of the things that we've caught. I don't know when the changes were made. It could have been at amalgamation time. It could have been over the years. Things may have just been put in at times, but I'm just, as a group, we're just trying to clean up the signage as we move forward, make it better, easier for people to read. And most of all, we're seeing more pressure put on our bylaw for folks for enforcement. So we're trying to support them with proper signage that is supported by the bylaw. Okay. So, Councillor Coleman, I don't think you'll get any pushback from the local businesses.
Anybody else? Okay, so Councillor Chambers, we're going to go to you for 17. You want it completely pulled?
Yes, I would. I'd like to vote on separately, and I have an amendment. That's why I want it.
Okay, so that being said, we are going to call the vote on everything except number 17. Everybody's clear with that? Okay, so all those in favors of everything other than 17? Opposed? That is carried. Now to number 17, Councillor Chambers.
It may be instructive to look at the diagram when I'm going to make my comments. The diagram is attachment 14, and this is a situation that, and I'm not a technical traffic engineer by any means, but it's rare that when people ask for a speed reduction that we increase the speed. It's hard to explain and hard to for the council to explain, yeah, you wanted a speed reduction, we're going to increase your speed. It's hard to do. And that happens in the 50 km/h zone presently that is being proposed to become a 60 km/h zone just before the speed limit goes to 40 kilometers an hour. And I would like the 50 km/h zone to be retained as a 50 km/h zone for 2 reasons. First, that's what the people asked for. And second, going into a 40 km/h zone, if you're traveling 60, means that in the 40 km/h zone, you're probably going faster than 40. And if you're going 50 instead of 60, then that would be less speeding in the 40 km/h zone. The original issue was coming around the bend that the speed limit was 70 km/h. They wanted that decreased because they were coming around there and hitting the 50 km/h zone at a higher rate of speed. And they couldn't see the 50 km/h zone because of the bend. And it was just kind of a bad situation for the kids getting on the school bus on that bend. So just to alleviate the problems that I'm going to have trying to explain why we're increasing the speed limit rather than decreasing the speed limit, or at least leaving it the same, I would ask that council or committee support leaving the 50 as it is and decreasing the 70 to 60 up until 50. And if you look at the diagram, it's easier to see. A picture's worth 10,000 of my words. And if there's any questions, I'll try and explain it.
Okay, so I need a seconder to that. Anybody? Councillor Kyle? Okay. So again, what we're talking about here is when it, right now, the existing 70 is going to a 60. We want to leave that. The existing 50 that was going to be increased to 60, we want to leave that at 50.
That's my amendment.
Okay. You have a seconder and Councillor Kyle. Any questions to that? Everybody's clear? Okay. So to number 17 King Street, I'll call the vote in as to the amended speeds, I'll call it. All in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Okay, Greg, you're good with that? Okay. Okay, thank you for that. So, bear with me here. Okay, so that takes us out of number 8, puts us into number 9, committee reports, Accessibility Advisory Committee minutes, and Accessibility Advisory report for July 10th and September 11th. Can I get a mover to get them on the board? Mayor Bailey, Councillor Oakley, questions? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? That is carried. 9.3, Brand Heritage Committee report. Can I get a mover? Councillor Howes. Seconder. I'll pick somebody. Councillor Kyle. Questions on that report? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Okay, number 10, resolutions. 10.1, Vic Garn Memorial Bench, Mount Pleasant Nature Park, from Mayor Bailey. Can I get a mover? Mayor Bailey, Councillor Howes. Questions on this? Mayor Bailey?
I think some questions and some comments on this, if it's okay.
Go ahead.
This has been a bit of an embarrassing situation, and it's I think we need to think for the future to have policy around naming of benches and who pays for benches and who gets benches. This was a very embarrassing situation because it came up at council by a councillor that's not here now from the ward where he served. And we just sort of dropped the ball. When we look back on the minutes of when the comments were brought up, knowing that this was going to be a good idea to put the bench there, we couldn't find the verbiage that went with the suggestion that we put the bench in for Mr. Vern. So his wife went ahead and did it herself because we didn't act quick enough as far as she was concerned, because we sort of dropped the ball. And I'm sure I was in the chair, so I'm going to say that I dropped the ball. But anyway, she went, because the park where we're going to put the bench is operated by a service club, and it's a much cheaper venture to buy a bench from a service club, by the way, than it is from the county. Mrs. Garn bought a bench for her husband in the park where Councillor Gatward said that it was suitable because he had a lot of heartstrings tied to the park in Mount Pleasant. But because we didn't sort of go fast enough in her mind, she just went ahead and didn't want to bother council again. Maybe thought that council thought that it might not have been a good idea. Who knows what she was thinking, but she went and bought her own bench. So at this point, the resolution shows that instead of buying a bench for Mr. Garn, now we're just going to reimburse his wife because she's paid for the bench, and I don't think she should have to, because we brought it up at council and maybe went too slow on it. So that's what the resolution speaks to. So instead of it costing $3,000 or whatever it would have been to put the bench there by the county, it is $1,690.48 taken out of the mayor's budget and council's budget instead of budget line. So I think we need to, moving forward, we'll see how this goes. I'm hoping people support it because it's already out there, and I'm sure it's going to come with publicity after we vote on it to dedicate the bench. But we need to understand that there's a lot of counselors, both alive and past, that are still around, and we just can't keep doing this. I'm thinking of, your father, Helen Mulligan. It goes on and on and on. People, Murray Powell. So it goes on and on and on. We should have a policy, whatever that policy is. I'm not suggesting we don't do it for everyone. I'm not suggesting we do it for everyone. I'm suggesting that this could go completely wrong if we don't address our policy on memorial benches, be they deceased or be they in recognition. We need to, after we do this resolution, I think we need to direct staff back to taking a look at what we do and what we think is suitable, because really there's a lot of counselors out there still running around that are alive. And other people, CEOs, all kinds of people that should be recognized if that's what we're going to do. So I hope you understand what I'm trying to say is there's been no damage done yet, but I think it will open up a bag of tricks later if we don't do something.
Okay, Councillor Coleman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I fully agree with what the mayor said. This is probably we're walking on thin ice in this because we're setting a precedent, and I don't have a problem with it. I went and looked for the bench yesterday and I couldn't find it, so I'm not sure where it is in the park and whatnot. I just think, and he's mentioned it, and we're setting a precedent for what we've done and haven't done, and where we're going to go with this. So I'm not sure. Maybe we should defer this for a moment and have something in place to make this all work. Because I think if we do this with one, are we going to do that same amount for every one? So I think that's where I have issues with it. Thank you.
Councillor Howes and Mayor Bailey.
Thank you. And Councillor Coleman's right. However, I'm still in support of the mayor's motion on this. But it is, as the mayor pointed out, it's significant that Mrs. Garn was able to find a $1,600 bench instead of the $4,000 bench that happens if you try to do it through the county. And I do agree. Part of my reason for not supporting deferring it is I think it's going to take a while to sort this out in terms of a broader program, because we have to look at who deserves to have a park named after them, who deserves to have a street named after them, who deserves a bench. This is a complex issue, and it's going to take some time to sort this out. And I completely agree that we do need to sort it out so we can tell people, because we have people all the time who, somebody whose dad was a counselor 30 years ago, and hey, can we get a street named after my dad? And it's a nice idea, but it's just one of many possible tribute memorial opportunities, and we have to establish some groundwork on this.
Mayor Bailey?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair. I agree with Steve and with Councillor Coleman that we do need to have policy over all of this. This one here, as I said, was brought forward by Councillor Gatward, so enough time has gone by. She hasn't been at this table for almost a year. And the fact that the widow went and did her own showed that she really didn't think it was going to happen, or whatever. As I said, I don't know what she thought. But we can't let this one go. We have to use this one as the fact that we did say something in a meeting that we thought it was a good idea. So we have to make that good idea. We have to be good on that good idea. and then we have to go back. And I think when we do go back, we have to also understand that the county of Brant is only 23 years old, and we have to just sort of, Mr. Garn is one of the first ones that crosses the line. He was a municipal councillor before the amalgamation, so it's a little unusual that this is happening, but I hope people stand behind this knowing that we're not going to put ourselves in this kind of an embarrassing situation again as council. And I don't ever want it to make it look like we're cheap or we didn't appreciate the service, because we do with everyone, whether you get a bench or whether you don't. But this is a funny sort of a thing that's fallen off track and out of sight. So I hope people will support it.
Councillor Chambers.
And I support it 100%. I served with Vic, as I believe Brian and I are the only ones that have. And over the years, I think last count, I've served over 80 different councillors. As far as I'm concerned, every one of them deserves a bench for what they put up with and what they do. We need a policy going forward. Councillor House said 30 years ago, serving with a father, I served with 3 fathers on the council, and I think none of them have a bench, but I know there are benches. Reg Campbell has one out here. I don't know how it got there. I think there's another one here and there. So it's a good idea. Councillors put up with a lot, and if someone wants to sit on a bench and relax and remember the councillor, that's fine with me. Hopefully I'll have a bench someday.
Councillor Miller.
Just a question on the motion itself. It says council direct staff to create and fund a plaque. I'm reading between the lines. I'm assuming that this plaque is going on the bench. Is that correct? And is there a price tag to that plaque?
Yeah, through the chair to Councillor Miller, there is going to be a plaque on the now she's already done it. So whatever the cost of the plaque was is probably included in the 1690. Lynn's already paid for the bench with the plaque. So we'll have to find the bench apparently, but when we do find the bench, I'm sure it's plaqued, and I'm sure that it's part of the 1690 or 6990 or whatever it is. And if it isn't, then we're going to pay for that, whatever it is. I think a plaque's $154. So whether it's included in this 1600 or whether it's another 100 and whatever, that's what the county would reimburse Mrs. Garn with.
Okay.
That's what the motion says.
Councillor Miller.
Yeah, no, it's a little clearer. It doesn't quite say that in there, but okay, I understand it. Thank you.
Okay, so I'm going to circle back to Councillor Coleman. You had potentially suggested. Okay, I just wanted to make sure that's clear. Any other questions on this? Okay, so we're going to do 2 things here. We're going to vote on this, and then somebody's going to put something on the floor for some sort of policy to go back to staff. So on the resolution as it is, all in favor? Opposed? That is carried. So somebody want to throw something on the floor, whether, I don't know if it's a motion or direction to staff, or how do we want to do this, committee? Councillor Coleman?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I would put direction to staff that staff figure out a way or somehow that we can recognize past municipal councillors here at this table and recognize their achievement in an appropriate way.
Okay. Seconder, Councillor Oakley. Questions to that, Councillor Oakley?
Through the chair, if I can just offer a friendly amendment to expand that to municipal elected officials and municipal staff as well.
That's to the mover. Good with that. You're the seconder. I'm assuming you're good with that. You got that. Councilor McAlpine, you had something to the amendment?
Well, I was just wondering, 10.2 is kind of looking at a hub, and I'm wondering if that would fit in with this
That's
conversation.
totally separate.
Okay.
Mayor Bailey?
Just one more thing, just before we vote. And other people, very important people to the community, to the municipality that sit on boards for lifetimes. I'm looking at the Heritage Committee, and when it was first formed in 2000, when we first amalgamated, Mr. Burns, Michael, and I sat on that together as the very first Heritage Committee, and Michael's just passed away. So the Heritage Committee will sort that bench out, or that recognition, and knowing Michael, it's going to be a tree with a piece of slate, because he was pretty much that kind of guy. But other people that have served the county faithfully, I could throw names out, but I guess I won't. They'll be recognized at whatever piece of the county they served at. So Steve's right now working on something with me and other people to recognize Michael. He's been here right from the beginning. And there's other committees that other people have sat on. So I think that should be separate from this. This is just what we've just said.
Duly noted. Okay, so we've got direction to staff. I don't think we need to vote on that. We're all good on that. Okay, everybody's clear. Thank you for that. Okay, so moving on. So we've got 10.2, Cowan Community Health Hub commemorative plaque. Mover, Mayor Bailey, seconder. Councilor Bell.
Did we vote on 10.1? Because I don't think I put my hand up.
Yep.
All right, great. Passed? That's great. That's great. Thank you for voting.
Well, the 10.1 we voted on for the resolution that was there.
That's wonderful.
And then we did a direction to staff.
Thank you.
For the rest.
Okay.
Okay, so questions on 10.2? Councilor Miller.
The price tag, 5,000. I just heard that a plaque costs $154. So, will we see this plaque before? I don't know. Yeah, we want to recognize the donor, the team. But is that what it costs now for a plaque? I have no idea.
Through you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for recognizing the fact that there's a difference between $154 and $5,000. I wouldn't have caught that maybe. But, so what this is, Councillor Miller and everyone else, this is exactly the same kind of plaque that we put on all of our new builds. It's exactly the one that we have at the OPP, and they are 5,000, almost 5,000. We've said 5,000, so that if it's 4,673, we'll come in under budget and we'll look really, really clever. But they're exactly the same plaques that you see at the front door here, and the council and the people that were on the committee to build this. The OPP has one. Canesville, the new Canesville Center has one. Fire Halls have one. We just didn't get to one and really all this is direction. Does council want to pay for this? Because we do have money, or we could find money at BME if we had to do our own plaque. But there's people already that worked very hard on the health hub that are gone. Our Brooks gone. So this is just capturing the moment in time when the health hub opened. It's no different than any other building that we've done. We're going to use the same supplier, the same sort of quality of brass or bronze, which are very impressive, and they don't look like $154, that's for sure. And it's just a matter of because Dr. McDonald was very involved, and you were on the committee, Councillor Bell, I was on other people were on the committee. So all this is to treat the health hub like it's a county build. It just wasn't, it was a BMD build, but you're the only shareholder. So whether the money comes out of the council or whether it comes out of BME, it doesn't really matter, but the quality of the plaque is exactly the same as we put on all of our new builds. Okay. That's my idea.
Questions to it? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Okay, so communications, I see none. Other business, Councillor Coleman, you had something.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and allow me a little leeway in this one. I'm going to talk about these speed signs that have started sticking up in villages and whatnot around the county. And I could really use a lot of descriptive words, but they're a hazard to farm machinery. Trying to get farm machinery through them. The problem is they ask us to straddle them. So straddle's fine. So you got to line up a traffic behind you. You're going to have to wait for the traffic in front of you to clear out. Because I measured my tractor this morning with the duals on it, it's over 14 feet wide. That can't go through a lot of those spots where those signs are placed. So I believe those signs have got a place, and that is on the residential streets. That's where I always heard the complaint. Mount Pleasant, I'll throw out, is Russell Street. heard nothing but complaints in the last 15 years. Russell Street. Put it there in Russell Street where they belong, because there's no farm tractors going through there. Wait till the combine season starts. We're going to have problems. And like I say, they want us to straddle them, fine. But we don't have wide enough road for the traffic coming both ways. That is the problem. There's one sitting out in Oakland, coming into Oakland from Norfolk County. So the farmer says, I'm going to hit that hydro pole. Because he's swerving to the right. I said, you're supposed to straddle it. He says, then where is the oncoming traffic going to go? Now, most farmers will say they haven't got time to bother calling staff or whatever like that. They call your counselor or talk to the counselor about it. But I'm just bringing this forward. It needs to be looked at somehow. I can support them in the right areas. But don't penalize the farmers. Agriculture is still #1 in this county.
So for clarification, Councilor Coleman, you're talking the knockover signs?
Those yeah. And if we damage the tires on them, who's going to be responsible for, especially a combine tire, to $3,000 to $5,000? That's where I'm coming from. And you know, some people have knocked them down or knocking them down, but it's just, I'm worried about the oncoming traffic coming in the way. You have to give right for them to come. You also got to line up with traffic behind you. It is no thrill moving farm machinery on any road. Ask Councilor Chambers, he knows as well as I do. It's a problem, and it's only going to get worse. And I've sympathized with the people that are living on those roads, but they are thorough roads. We don't drive on the side streets. We drive down, whether it's going from Burford down Maple Ave, or Bishopgate, or Oakland, or Scotland, or Mount Pleasant. Even Scotland now, we've thrown in the speed bumps. Plus you got them things sticking up. How much more deterrent do we want for agriculture? There's some big companies around the Scotland area that pay a lot of tax. And when I go there, I get the grumbling. How do you like to take our tanker trucks over those speed bumps? They don't appreciate it. They understand what the concern of the residents is, but we're penalizing the people that are already there, and we're active people that are farming. That's where I'm concerned is. Thank you.
No, I appreciate that, and I must say, if I was ever going to come back to something, I wouldn't want to come back as one of those signs. I've got one just on the top of my hill, and that thing gets run over by trucks going up the hill, and I'm amazed at how much those signs can take, because they're knocked over, and still stand back up and go, hey, I'm here again. They are leading into Harley and leading into Oakland. They are going in there. I guess I didn't appreciate it from a combine point of view, but as far as big trucks and stuff like that, my understanding, correct me if I'm wrong here, Greg, I'll call on you, there is enough room for a normal size vehicle. I'm not saying that it is for the combines. I'm not sure what else the answer is, because we have a huge issue with speeding all over this county. It is one of our biggest issues. I appreciate the fact of that it's tough to get over those bumps and humps with a truck. I don't know what the answer is. I'm not sure are you just looking to bring this up or to have it revisited, or I'm not sure where you want to go with this. Councillor Cobb.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Through you, I was just going to add to Councillor Coleman's comments. I wholeheartedly agree. And I think the other thing that's not considered sometimes is that when we're asked to drive over them with the equipment, that's assuming we've got something that has the clearance for that. Some of our balers and things like that are really low to the ground and can't take that impact from those signs, and the tires are maybe not as great. And Councillor Coleman, Councillor Chambers, they can all agree that fixing a equipment tire is significantly more expensive than fixing a car tire any day of the week. So for sure, I 100% agree with the sentiment that Councillor Coleman's sharing here. I don't know what the solution is, but I do know that just north of me is Greenfield Road that goes into the co-op in Ayr. They put those signs up and they lasted for a week, because that's a main thoroughfare for all of the tractors that are taking their grain to the co-op.
Councillor Howes, Mayor Bailey.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Since Greg is in the room, are we able to have him enter into this conversation? I'm curious as to how many of the, are we calling them knockdown? Whatever, knockdowns?
Yep.
How many of the knockdowns have been installed countywide? And then do we have a view of how many of those might be on agricultural routes? Like not every road is a road that, right? And I don't know, in the rural agricultural area if there are main roads where the equipment go, and I know they don't go down side streets obviously, but maybe we could bring Greg into this discussion since we're all here.
Greg? And then we're going to go Mayor Bailey after that, and then Councillor Chambers.
Thank you. Through the chair, I'll just give a little bit of a background. A lot of us have attended OGRA. We've all gone to speakers. We've listened to traffic specialists. They bring us lots of solutions for traffic calming in residential areas, but they don't really give us a whole lot of recommendations for the rural areas. And the rural areas is where we're seeing the higher speed limits. That's what we're trying to control. A lot of these initiatives have come through Brand Safe Streets. As someone pointed out earlier, as you're entering villages, people within the villages are the ones that are concerned about the speed. So to your question about placement, what we try to do is place them as you're entering villages, whether it's Mount Pleasant, Glen Morris, Oakland, lots of places around the county. And that's also to try to share some of the traffic calming dollars that we're spending, not only in the built up areas, but some of the smaller villages where we have identified concerns. So when we're looking at solutions, there's not really anything out there. So what we did was we reached out to our supplier members and people in the industry to ask them for something that we could use in these areas. And they came back with these knockdown signs. And what they said is that they can be driven over, like not your tire directly over the sign, but you can go over the middle, go over it slowly, it'll fold down, it'll pop back up for larger equipment. So we looked at that as an option. The great thing about these is that they're low cost and that they're a trial period. And what we're hoping is to get feedback from the community, and that's what we're getting today, and hopefully in the future. At the start of this meeting, I brought around business cards for the counselors that I know people don't like going and looking for websites or trying to remember a web address. We're trying to make it as simple as possible for the community to get back to us. So you can scan these little cards, hand them out, and then people can give us their feedback. If staff only hear from 5 or 6 folks in the community how much they love an initiative, we think we're doing good, so we'll continue to proceed. But we do need to hear some people that have concerns. I don't call it negative feedback, I just call it feedback. And then we later take that away and try to build our program better. I am never offended by anyone's comments or concerns. People think because maybe I involved with a department where we implemented something, if it doesn't work, then we'll take it out. What I didn't want to do with traffic calming into these villages is that they do suggest gateways, which are built up islands in the center of the road, hard signs, barrier curb. I come from a long line of farmers. I know that would not work. So we're trying to realize that we're in a mixed community of both built up areas and rural areas. We do appreciate our farming community wholeheartedly. And I think maybe moving forward, if we can get some feedback from our farmers and then working with our counselors, if they don't want to work directly with staff, I would be more than happy to find spots where these will work within the community, because I do believe they work. I also believe that some residents do enjoy them. We did place some in Mount Pleasant. They were stolen within 3 days. Within 12 hours, I heard how well they were working and how people wanted them back. So we went back and then we put them in the road so that they couldn't be stolen, hopefully. And we are going to remove them shortly. maybe sooner than later. But we do need feedback, because if we are not going to place them back on these rural roads as you're entering the villages, staff are going to have an answer for residents when they call, and we're going to have to we're going to have to say who has directed us not to have them put on these roads, or what the outcome is. So I'd rather us work together so that we have a unified message back to the community.
Quick follow-up. Thanks, Greg. And so this is a trial experiment anyway, and by the sounds of it, they would be coming, even if these were adopted permanently, they would be coming down for snowplow season anyway, I presume. And because I had questions about the kind of like the L-shaped brackets that are on the road, and whether it's not even farm equipment, like if a motorcycle hit it, or if other, there were questions about that.
So through the chair, so the first part of this pilot program would be to remove them for the winter season. But at the same time, I wanted to look at having them year round, if possible. And if you think about the one on King Edward at the school crossing there at Iron Gate, it's the same sort of design, and it's there year round. We can just zip out and around it with the plows. But that, traffic calming when you can do it year round is the optimal thing, not seasonally. But this is a seasonal remedy for now, but it would be something that we could look at in the future. And especially if, as Councillor Coleman pointed out earlier, if we work together and it works for local industry as well as farming and road operations, then we might be able to leave some of these things in place year round. As I said, we're kind of stepping into a new area here. So the first initial step will just to do it seasonally. But in the future, we want to look towards year-round problem solving for traffic calming.
So then we go Mayor Bailey, then Councillor Chambers.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair, and Councillor Coleman and Councillor Kyle are both right. But the last two emails that I got before school opened, please get your speed bumps at Scotland and in Mount Pleasant. So it's just proof that people want different things. Things are important to different people. We talked yesterday about Curtis Ave and what that's going to look like someday soon. Just because someone thinks it's a right thing to do doesn't mean it works. So we're gonna have to revisit some of that. But just so that everybody know that everyone pays taxes, and I understand that the farmers have to do their thing, but the same guy that lives on the corner there in Scotland is just frantic about having no speed bump there. So we all have to do our part, but we do need a consistent response, because when they call me and say, where the speed bump's gone, I need to tell them where they're gone and why they left. And just like if a farmer calls me and says, you know what, I just buggered up the rear end of my truck or my whatever because of your stupid speed bumps, I've got to say they're there because of this, or they're coming off or whatever. So we do need to have some communication as to what's going to happen and what's permanent, what's seasonal, because once they don't get the right response or a response from their counselors quick enough, they come to me. So I get both of them. I get the farmers that talk about their tires, and I get the people that are talking about their kids at the corner, take them away, put them in, So we do need to have clear, because our job is to not make our counselors or the mayor look uninformed if people ask us questions. So we need to have a consistent dialogue as to why we do everything in the county. Because right now there's a few things that if you asked me and probably asked Robert, they could be different answers. So we need to be consistent moving forward.
Okay. Councillor Chambers.
Yeah, just a few comments on this, and it's a mixed feeling out there. A lot of people really like them, particularly in the urban areas. For someone who drives a 20-foot grain drill down the roads, I didn't realize you could drive over them, to tell you the truth. I'm looking forward to trying that on the Harley Road. We'll see how they stand up. I do notice in some situations they are planted right almost parallel to a high road sign, which you can't get around either way, so I guess you gotta drive over top of them. So that's something to keep in mind when you install them. If you wanna see something, it's humorous in a way, but it's disgusting in another way, go to Maple Avenue in Burford and look at the and someone does a donut around it, and there's more rubber around that sign than anywhere else in the township for that matter. So people are going to be stupid. It's the same stupid people that speed, and we've all got speed tickets, so maybe we're all a little stupid, but speeding is an issue. Anything we can do, either permanently or temporary. The one thing that I will make mention of, and this is something I think all councilors should recognize, is that there are arterial roads in the county that are designed not for people's driveways or for people to sit out in front of and watch the people walk by. It's to move goods and services across the county and across the province for that matter. So people that complain about the amount of traffic, the speed of traffic on arterial roads have to recognize that if they live on those roads, they're going to have to be a little bit tolerant of traffic volumes and traffic speed. Cars go by my driveway at 80 kilometers an hour if they're going legally, and I don't think anything about it. If I lived in a village and they were going by 80 kilometers an hour, I'd be ticked off. So keep things in perspective, keep arterial roads designed, able to move in services, and be tolerant if you live on these things. I'm sorry, but Highway 53 is a arterial road. Bishopsgate Road is an arterial road. There's going to be traffic volume and traffic speeds. That's just the way things are, and we can't stop all cars from speeding. We can't expect all goods and services to travel across the province at 40 kilometers an hour. They have to be going 80 if they're going to get there. Everything we buy at a store is taken there by a truck, and trucks have to get to their destinations in this day and age. So speeding is a great issue. It's great to talk about. People have to be tolerant, and I'll let you know, Greg, how that little sign stands up in Harley, because there's going to be a 20-foot John Deere grain drill go right over the top of it. So I'll let you know if it stands up.
Councillor Coleman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to make a recommendation that county staff work with the Ag Advisory Committee and the Federation of Agriculture Committee to come up with a simple solution for this on where these signs can be placed and get some feedback from them, because they're the grassroots. I can't expect somebody, because they use profane language when they tell me, you're the counselor, you deal with it. So I'm bringing it forward. And I think there's two committees in this county that we can work with, and staff work with it and whatnot. I'll make that a motion.
Councillor Garneau will second that. Questions to that motion? Councillor Chambers.
Just so I understand it, the way I read that motion is that the Safe Streets people need to be talking with the Agricultural Advisory Committee and perhaps the Brant County Federation of Agriculture to have input on these kind of things, and I support that.
Okay. And just one final one, Councillor Chambers, I can guarantee you that sign will pop back up, because I've seen every wheel on an 18-wheeler hit the one behind my place, and it just goes, beep. Anyway. Okay, so everybody understands what the motion on the table here. It has been seconded. All in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Okay, so that brings us to the end of our regular. Councillor Oakley.
Through the chair, if with permission, I have one more item under new business, if that's acceptable.
Go ahead, Councillor.
So I'm sure everyone noticed on their desk that there's a printout here from an article from the Paris Independent about parking. Councillor Bell referenced it earlier in our parking discussion. Hold on. As just to those who are watching who don't subscribe to the Paris Independent. It's a resident from the Arlington Parkway who is experiencing issues with parking. Particularly, they live in an area where you can only park on the street for 24 hours, then you have to move your vehicle, and there's not enough parking spaces in people's driveways to stay out of the street. One of their suggestions is Hamilton has a system where you can buy a parking pass for your street to be exempt from the 24-hour turnaround time. With permission from the chair, I typed up a motion in response to Councillor Bell's statements during the parking bylaw discussion, which I could read out now. So whereas parking access has been a challenge in neighborhoods designed and built in an earlier era before the housing and affordability crisis, and whereas multi-generational living situations have become more common, and whereas other municipalities have opened up more options for families to park by enabling parking permits to be purchased, and whereas parking permits can also have the disadvantage of adding a cost requirement to what is currently a first-come, first-served public asset, therefore be it resolved that the staff of the County of Brant investigate permitted parking options for homes that are on streets where currently 24-hour restrictions exist, the advantages and disadvantages thereof, and return by January 31st, 2024.
Questions to that motion? Mayor Bailey.
Through the chair, it's just a report coming forward.
Correct.
Thank you.
Anybody else? All in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Okay, so now that brings us to the end of our regular session here. Motion to go into camera. Councillor Coleman, Councillor Howes, 5 minutes. Okay, we are back in open session now. Thank you very much for coming back. As far as the agenda is concerned, I do not see anything else on the agenda. Our next meeting will be 1 month from now, same time, 9 a.m. Seemed to work pretty good today. As I say, this was our first daytime meeting for this committee. I think it went well. I appreciate everybody attending, and with that, motion to adjourn. Councillor Oakley.